Hey YouTube, Awesome Writer here. As of this recording, we're less than a year away from another new MMPR toy line, so I thought it would be fun to take a look back at my top 5 personal favorite MMPR figure lines. This could be from anything from basic figures to bike figures to slightly larger figures, but the only criteria I really had for this was it had to be one that had at least the core team available, because there has been some one-off series that you might just get the Red Ranger, the White Ranger, the Green Ranger, so those aren't included on this. And my generic disclaimer is this is just my personal list, and I'm not basing this off of which ones are the best, most accurate, most to scale or whatever, not fan nonsense. It's just my personal favorite based on feelings, as there are some that are less accurate retro ones that are higher on the list than more accurate ones. It's just my personal favorite. Some people say I don't need to put this disclaimer, and it's probably futile, but some people just don't seem to understand that everyone's got a different opinion when I do these lists. So an honorable mention, just because it didn't fit the criteria of this, is the Super Legends Chaser figures from back during Jungle Fury. I think we only got Green and White Ranger, but these were really cool. They weren't the most accurate helmet-wise, at least in terms of green, but I still think they were really good figures, with one of my favorite molds in the series being the Jungle Fury mold. I thought it was well detailed. Not to mention these were super exciting because it was the first and only time as of this recording we did a Chaser figure. Not to mention this was back when it was super exciting. Nowadays we have dime a dozen comments, people moaning about the MMPR stuff. But back then it was super exciting because we never really got retro stuff outside of the 15th anniversary toy line. So when we had this Green Ranger updated mold figure in the middle of a current series, it was super exciting. So coming in at number 5 is actually those Hasbro, I don't want to say basic figures, I don't know what you call them, but I'm going to call them basic figures. But we got those special releases, and they released them in 2 waves that were kind of like a midway point between a basic release and a lightning release, at least in terms of price. And I actually did not get all of these. I missed out on the second wave because I pre-ordered the first wave on Hasbro Pulse at the time when I had it, but then my local Walmart stocked it so much sooner, but I just decided to wait for my pre-order. So as a result, when the second wave went up, I was like, I'll just wait for Walmart. My Walmart never got them, any of the Walmarts I checked, so I missed out on them, and they kind of went for high prices later, especially Green, because everyone started scalping Tommy merch. But the ones I got, I thought were pretty good. I was a little harsh on the price in the review because I do feel they felt a bit expensive for what felt like basically a basic figure with a few more accessories. But if we're just talking about the figure itself, they were very well done for a slightly cheaper figure that wasn't like Lightning Collection price. Like, it had a decent mold that wasn't overly muscly, they had very accurate helmets. They were overall just very solid figures. Number 4 for me is just kind of one that's more of a personal favorite, which is the Automorphin figures. The black Automorphin figure was my very first PR toy ever, so I have a soft spot for it. These obviously aren't the ones you're going to for accuracy. However, I do think they're pretty cool, especially of the time when the sort of Morphin Heroes concept was very new and exciting. Having a figure where you could sort of act out that gimmick was super neat. And in general, whether it's these or the later ones, I've always had a soft spot for these. We are doing some updated ones with this new line. I'll be interested to see how they feel in hand. I really do feel like they could do better ones nowadays though. Like, these new ones don't look the greatest, but I feel like we could really take advantage of modern design and make ones that look better while also having this type of gimmick. But still, these aren't like the most accurate, like I said, but I just really like the gimmick and the kind of the retro feel of them, and it kind of brings me back to the nostalgia of the early days. Coming in at number 3 is the legacy release of the MMPR movie figures from Bandai. Now, they did do legacy release for the regulars, which almost made it on this list, but those were okay for me. But I just really love these ones because we so rarely got like actual MMPR movie merch. Obviously, there was technically an MMPR movie line back in the day, but the Megazord obviously wasn't the exact one for the show. I wouldn't mind owning that even though it's fugly. I was about to say I can't imagine anyone that would want to own that over the regular Ninja Megazord, but I would kind of want to own that for the completion. Anyway, side tangent. Point is obviously that Megazord was released in the show, but all of the figures were just metallic versions of already existing figures with the Ninja crest on them. We didn't get ones actually based off of the figures. In fact, the closest we got back in the day, unless I'm forgetting something, to actually accurate suit figures from the show was those McDonald's toys. So this was the first time in a long time. Like, even now, I think because of weird rights issues, figures for these guys are so few and far between. In fact, I'm actually legitimately excited for those Funko Pops that are coming up, just because I do love those suits so much. So it was exciting in general to get figures for these, but I actually thought they were pretty great. I thought they were very accurate, well articulated. They're some of my favorite items in my MMPR collection just because it was so special to finally get these, and I love these iteration of the suits. Number 2 is the Lightning Collection. They obviously don't have a clean cut set of 5, meaning that they did so many different variants. Like, we had our initial wave, because they didn't all come in one wave, but you know what I mean, of the original 5, and then we did updates. Hasbro tends to do that with Marvel Legends and Star Wars as well, where they will re-release a character but with an updated head sculpt, and they'll try to make it seem different with different accessories. Although they will also, funnily enough, re-release older outdated modes. Like, I'll see them released a new Obi-Wan figure from Revenge of the Sith that's clearly got a better face than the one that released in like 2014, but then they'll release like the 2014 outdated mold on a, I said that in a really weird accent, outdated mold, but on an outdated mold like on a retro packaging and be like, retro release, so they really, you know, make their money where they can, but can't blame them. Anyway, point is, we got multiple different re-releases, including, like, I think one of the last things they ever re-released was the remaster. And so you do have a bit of a hodgepodge there, but between all the releases, you can have a really solid set of very accurate figures with good helmets, the best articulation for sort of like the basic figures, meaning it's the best articulation aside from figure arts, well accessorized, excuse me. Not to mention you also have other stuff as well, like you got the ninja modes, you got Draken, you got some comic stuff, the Omegas if you sort of tangentially count that. So in general, I think this is really good because you can get a very well-articulated, well-detailed team, but you also get all kinds of other little bonus stuff from MMPR that you might not necessarily get with other lines. But my number one personal favorite, and again, this is what I mean by it not necessarily meaning the most accurate, is the Too Hot to Handle original 90s figures. These obviously clearly aren't the most accurate proportion-wise, but I've always just really loved these. You know, these were ones I never owned in terms of the originals when I was younger. I always saw the commercials on the VHSs when I rewatched them and always wanted them so much, and it was one of my like prized possessions when I got a set on eBay, although they're still in box and I didn't want to open them, so I can't really review them. But still, I always just really liked these. There was just something special about them being the larger size, and then like as time went on, when you had stuff like I almost said the Turbo Man movie, but Jingle All the Way with Turbo Man, it kind of felt like the Turbo Man doll, and that kind of evoked the popularity of MMPR in my opinion. So there was just something special about these figures that kind of went along with that very early MMPR hype. I do own a few versions of like the Karate Chop versions and like the silver one that came with Zane's Megazord. Probably my most coveted ones are the Zeo ones. I actually did not know they did those back in the day, and I really want to track those down. But in general, as I've gone on with my collecting, you know, I never really thought too much about accuracy till I got older. And then when I did start to think about that and sought out figures that are more accurate, for my collection, I did start to appreciate my older collection more so in terms of the retro vibe. Like, I don't like my Wild Force Lost Galaxy figures or these figures because they're the most screen accurate or to scale or whatever. I like it because it's kind of a retro toy collecting feel to it. It's interesting to see the different types and styles of molds. And this, like, very specific type of mold that almost feels like a larger version of the bike figures just feels like such a quintessential 90s figure to me, and they're my personal favorite MMPR figure line. We'll have to see how these new figures turn out. Honestly, I'm really curious to see how they compare to the others and where they would rank, but let me know what your guys' favorite MMPR figures are in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell to get notifications for all my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.